Welcome, welcome everyone. Leslie M. Thornton, Hypnosis for Permanent Weight Loss. Today we have someone that I'm really excited to introduce you to. Dorothy has a podcast that is specifically on breakups. And something I was just saying to Dorothy was, and I'm going to read her full interview or her full introduction in a moment, is the fact that so many of you that I speak to when they are at the end of your rope with food and body and weight and dieting and all of that kind of stuff, and you're crazy enough to look into something like hypnosis for a way to relax, is, you've usually been through some really hard stuff, right? So grief or sadness or loss or just a terrible amount of stress, or, maybe even a parent that died even years ago, or, even a child. We've had a bunch of people who have lost their children at different points. And one of the other ones is, that I think isn't talked about enough, Dorothy, actually, is breakups.
Mhm.
I myself recently have gone through a breakup, and the pain, and I'm currently witnessing a friend of mine, very dear friend, going through a breakup. The pain of a breakup is extraordinary. One of my other friends was saying how she had gone through a breakup, and she also experienced like a death of a loved one, and she said that the breakup pain was worse.
Mm.
And I haven't had those things happen back to back, but we were kind of talking about why that is. And I'd be interested to hear, Dorothy, your perspective on that. But we were talking about how like that human being still exists on the planet. Like they're a push of a button away to still talk to them, and all that habit energy of, having that safety blanket and that comfort zone be there. Yeah, it can just be really, really challenging. So before we get into getting into your expertise here, I'm going to read your bio. So Dorothy Johnson is a breakup coach with the Life Coach School. She teaches her clients how to get over their ex and build a life better than the one they had with their ex in 3 months or less by addressing the root cause instead of heartbreak symptoms. I love it. I love it because we work on the root cause of the weight loss versus the weight symptoms. She uses a simple 3-step process to heal the heart, create closure, and get excited about the future again. She has her podcast, and we'll let you know definitely by the end how to find Dorothy on all the platforms. So, Dorothy, thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. And I love all the things that you already just started with. Like, oh, it's going to be a delicious conversation.
Woo!
I love
Absolutely.
it. I love it.
Hmm.
That was one common thing that I said a lot was it was harder to grieve someone still alive than it was to grieve someone who had already died. My biological father passed away when I was 24, and I went through that breakup at 26. And it did feel extremely difficult, way more extremely difficult than the passing of my biological, because it's like, oh, the passing means their physical form is gone. But when you're grieving someone who's still alive, you think that you can still change the reality of the situation because the other individual is still alive.
Oh,
Mhm.
that's such a good point to bring up. It's that control factor, like, and that
Yeah.
self-doubt, and what could I have done differently, and what couldn't I, right? And like the whole the anger, of like, oh, well, that they did that, then like I remember the stories that I, was kind of making up in my mind about like going through all of the events and being like, oh, well, he lied at that point, and this, that, and the other thing. And I found out later that that wasn't true, but I convinced myself, right? And it's just, I don't know, just all the mental games that happen in our own minds,
It's
when a
so
breakup
wild.
happens. Wow. And so
Mhm.
validating that your father versus the breakup felt harder because of that.
Yeah. Mhm.
Wow.
It's
Wow.
very
Wow. Wow.
difficult.
Yeah, definitely. And like, so with so what inspired you to start this empire? I would love to hear the story.
Yes.
It must have
I
started
would
maybe with that breakup. Is it the 26-year-old breakup?
It was the 26-year-old breakup. So that's for
Mhm.
me, that was 5 years ago now. And so I was dating a guy for about 7 years, and we had just moved back to Florida because he got done with dental school. So I was like, yes, he's done with dental school. I had gone to grad school. I got my big girl job. And we were both moving back to Florida. We were finally going to live together again. And we got this house. I was like, yes, yes, yes. At that time, I was like it's all working, right? We're going to get married. We have babies. We're doing all the things correctly as to growing up. I'm so excited. And I went away to Chicago for a business trip, and he broke up with me on the phone while I was away at this business trip. And I was just super angry, super frustrated about it. And I get super stubborn. So I was like, I'm going to find an apartment here. I moved into the apartment with just my suitcase. And then I was like, I'll come back a month later when you're gone doing like something else. And so when I got there, all of my stuff was piled in the front room. And I found it. My neighbor came over to let me know that there was a new girl staying at our house every single night since I had left. So not only was I grieving and mourning the loss of like my best friend, the life that I thought I was going to have, it was compounded with so much anger and so much resentment about this new person coming in and having seemingly just like picked up my life, the life that I had worked so hard for, and took it from me. And I was just seething with so much anger and so much resentment. And I remember in that moment, I was very committed and determined to like, I cannot live a life that is less than. I refuse to go backwards. I refuse to have a life that was like the life I had before him. And I decided to start Googling how to get over your ex, how to forgive and let go. And I did that for a year. And I did all of the things the internet would provide me, all of them. I meditated, I journaled, I got in the best shape of my life. I traveled a lot. And throughout all of that, yes, those things helped, but I was still like a year and a half later, I was still seething with so much anger and resentment. And I noticed at that point, I was in a new relationship. I noticed old patterns reappearing. And I noticed that I was still making decisions in a way that was in hopes to like get his attention or something. And so I knew like there had to be something different, like I was missing something. And that is when I found the life coach school, and I was taught that thoughts create feelings. And I have a psychology background. I have my master's in psychology, but I had never, and my dad's a psychologist. So it's just, that's also like an ironic piece where I never heard just point blank thoughts create feelings. And when I realized that, I realized and became aware of all of the stories I had around this breakup, what I was making it mean about myself, what I was making it mean about the relationship that I used to have with him, what I was making it mean about my future, the disempowering stories I had about my future without him in it. And I realized also that forgiveness was really for me, and that by me choosing to feel angry and resentful, it was only harming me. And I think that I thought that the longer I held on to that anger, the longer he would suffer. And like, that's clearly not the case. He's probably not feeling angry. He's probably living his new beautiful life with his new girlfriend, not feeling angry just because I'm feeling angry. So it was this beautiful epiphany of so many things. I just became so open and so aware of. And I just remember one of the main stories I was making it mean was like, clearly he never loved me. If you move on that quickly, how can you love someone? Like, clearly you didn't love me enough because you wouldn't have moved on so quickly. And that was clearly also not necessarily the case. And me telling myself that optional story just created so much suffering. Like, pain is going to be in a heartbreak regardless, but the suffering, that part is optional. And so I think it's really, really important for us to start looking at the root cause of heartbreak, the root cause of not being able to get over someone, which is the thoughts that you're thinking, the stories that you're creating, and ultimately those stories and thoughts create desire or attachment to that partner. And when we start addressing that, all of the breakup symptoms fall away. Should I be in contact with him? Should I go to this party? Should I do this? Should I do that? It's like all that stuff doesn't really matter when you've addressed desire and attachment and the stories you have around your breakup. I hope that makes sense.
Hugely powerful. Absolutely. Yeah. A major part of hypnosis for permanent weight loss and of my journey, and obviously with all coaching, is, realizing that thought causes those feelings. And we're walking around all day, and it's like we're feeling, the pain, the suffering, for people who are, quote unquote, addicted to food, the cravings, the mad at
Mhm.
yourself because you ate too much last night, or, with a breakup of like, I should have done this. I should like just all of, and it's just could be like, oh, like there's both modalities, right? Because I've also learned the benefit of like actually sitting and feeling the
Mhm.
feelings and like allowing them
Yeah.
to pass through, or using breath work and using, these types of things to kind of release the emotions in those ways.
Yeah.
But then to actually also my favorite. So when we do our like belief mastery, inspired by Byron Katie's work of just kind of like, okay, what am I
Love
believing
her.
right now? It's like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm believing that he never loved me. It's
Mhm.
like, is that true? Right. And it's like, but the way that I help my clients to really find the belief that they're believing is to actually feel into the body of that, where the exact stress or where the exact pain is. Right. And it's like, okay, now if you were to put a voice to that pain and just trust like whatever that voice is, like, what is it saying? It's like, I hate my life, or like,
Mm.
it's not fair, or, like whatever that is. And then it's like, there you go. That's the belief that we're here to work on.
Yeah.
And, from doing this work myself so much, it's like getting that. It's like once we identify of like, okay, here's the dialogue I say to myself every time that I'm stressed out or upset about something or get triggered in some way, shape, or form. First of all, realizing, when we write it all down, it's like, okay, how many people in the world right now are thinking the same exact script?
Same script. Same
Right?
script.
Same thing.
100%.
Hate
Mhm.
myself. I always fail. I can't get this. Why can't I ever do it right? Like whatever the flavor is for that person, or it could be projected at somebody else. They're an asshole. Why is this happening? Whatever. It's like, okay, it's not unique. Right. And it's just getting that like the feeling creates the thought creates the feeling. It's this whole, and it's like, let's actually like move that over here. But how do we do that? And that's what hypnosis for permanent weight loss is all about.
I love that. And I think it's really important to also look at like societal views and the way that we're trained to think about things, especially heartbreak, especially breakups. We're kind of trained to believe that they're terrible, they're difficult, they're hard. One of the ones that I talk about all the time is time. It's just going to take time to heal your heart,
Mm-hmm.
and really becoming conscious of unplugging from everyone else's beliefs. Like, can you unplug from what everyone else is believing and start to look at, do I want to subscribe to that idea? You can, but you don't have to. And I love that you're talking about it in terms of food and weight loss. And I just think that for heartbreak, it's something that we haven't questioned enough. Kind of like how you were saying, we haven't really talked about it enough. It's something that's like secretive, like it's under the rug and people don't want to bring it up, or maybe they're ashamed to talk about it. And it's something like that is going back to why I do what I do. It's so important to start talking about it. It is so
Mm-hmm.
important because we're doing it wrong. And as a society, as a collective, we can start doing it differently in a more efficient and a more kind to yourself way, and then be able to teach other people that. And I love it too, because everything you're teaching is stuff that is the skill set that they can then apply to their
Yes.
breakup even. And I just don't think that we see that until we're told like, oh, my weight loss journey also can be applied to my breakups or my heartbreak of any kind, really, not just like breakups and divorce, but grieving of like loss, anything like that. Loss of a job,
Exactly.
loss of a person. I love
100%.
it.
Because, yeah, to take it that next step further is like those feelings that we feel that's created by the thought, like we need to get rid of them. Like we as human beings are programmed to rid ourselves of suffering. And it's like,
Mm.
we know the fastest way to get rid of that is have a glass of wine or a bottle of wine or, a box of cookies or whatever. Right. It's like, I just had a
Mhm.
flash of, what's the movie with Reese Witherspoon, blonde, Legally
Is it?
Blonde, when she goes
Yes.
through the breakup and she's throwing her like, the candy and she's just eating so much chocolate as she's going through that. It's the best. I think that's the best breakup scene. If anything, that's just like good. At least somebody's like saying the way that it feels or like showing
Mhm.
what that is like. But I totally agree with you as far as, like that people aren't talking about it. I remember one of your podcast episodes, you were saying like, your family or something was like, how are you actually going to make a business on breakups? And you're like, well, here it is. And like, but it's so important because like, even like, you know, adults or divorces or whatever, like it is such a real phenomenon. And I also love that you have the thing of you don't just have to wait it out, because that's the worst. That's such a disempowering story. Especially if
No.
it can be, you know, like the things that you're unplugging from and plugging into can make the emotions just happen way faster, move through you better. The growth that you're, you know, intended to get from the
And
breakup can happen.
yes. And like you said, it's like when you're saying I have to wait through it. The whole kind of concept around just let time do its job is so disempowering. You mentioned that, but I just like want to make that, I want to emphasize it. It is so disempowering. And when it comes to getting over your ex, I promise you, it happens in a moment. Getting
Mm,
over your ex happens in a moment. There will be a switch that just goes off and it's done. And that to me, not only is that true, I've seen it and I've experienced it, but when you believe that and you're going into your breakup believing like I'm only one moment away, I'm only one thought away, I'm only one experience away from being over my ex, that feels so relieving and opens up so much space for you to allow a lot of the negative emotions that you're resisting or pushing away.
mm,
Does that make sense?
absolutely. Yeah. I was remembering a relationship that I was in myself in the past, and I knew that this was not the relationship for me, right? But I also, you know, I'm self-aware enough to know that I was attached, you know, and I was like, I wasn't like, I could lie and pretend that I, you know, like, oh, this guy, but I love this guy, you know, like wanted to
Mm-hmm.
be with him, not a good guy. But I dove into the inner work because I was aware that like, okay, whatever there is here for me to learn to get unattached.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get what that is, you know? And it did happen where it was just like that switch that you're talking about, like, there's that belief. Thank God, you know? And then every time that I have closed the door on a relationship, I know 100% sure that it's closed. And I've
Mm-hmm.
given myself enough grace to be like, if it's not actually closed, it isn't. And I can't, you know, regardless of what I know on paper, this is still what's happening. So let me turn towards it and get what I'm here to get. And like, maybe the relationship will evolve and we will heal together and it will last the test of time, maybe. Right. Or if not, I've grown and I will 100% know that I've gotten what I came here for. And the next relationship will be different than the last because I'm not shoving stuff under the rug.
Yes, so good. So good.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
really good.
I think
So,
that's important to look at too, because most people put off or like prolong getting over their ex because they're in a space of, I just want my ex back.
mm,
And I think that was really like a great point of view to make, because ultimately getting over your ex doesn't necessarily mean never being with that person again. It really means like learning that you're not at the effect emotionally of that person, learning that you can reduce and increase desire at your free will. It's not someone else who creates this deep connection for you. It's you. It's not someone else who creates this desire. You're not at the effect of that person, and recognizing that that person isn't attached to your future. The future that you wanted with that person isn't reliant or dependent on that person
mm,
being in your future. And
mm.
so that to me is what getting over someone really means. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're never with that person again. It just means that you're going to have zero desire, zero attachment, and you get to decide where you want that lever to be. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm curious because there's a TED talk that I saw, and the woman was talking, she had like 3 divorces, and she was saying how she just had to marry herself, was like what she really realized has to happen. And to me, what you're saying, you know, I have this belief within myself of like, when I really feel that I don't need anyone is when, you know, that person is going to come in and like whatever. And that's constantly the work that I'm always doing on myself. Like I just invested in a three-piece band for myself, aka like a keyboard, a bass guitar, and a electric drum set, because I'm just
That's so
like,
fun.
I'm about to just have fun by myself, create a band if anybody wants to come over, but like just really, invest in hanging by myself and having that really awesome relationship with myself, and all of that kind of stuff, and still using whatever relationships are around to keep noticing myself, and do whatever work needs to be done to let go of that attachment. But maybe you can let me know, is it sneaky to have that like in the background of like, first I have to do this and then it's going to happen, or is it right? Because everyone says as soon as you let go of it, then that's when it comes in. But I'm still just aware, I'm like, I'm still attached to marriage, so
Mhm.
therefore it's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, it's so funny. And there's a difference between being attached to an outcome that you would like to create and being committed to the outcome.
Ooh, I
So you,
love that.
right. So you can still want marriage. I want marriage. But it's coming from an unattached place where I'm just more committed to going out and create it. And like something that would be maybe a better example that's outside of this is I'm committed to creating a child. Like to me, in my mind, I want to have a baby. Her name's Marilyn, and I'm committed to creating baby Marilyn. I'm not attached to like the how or who I'm with to create baby Marilyn. Like she's gonna be in my life at some point, and I'm committed to that, not like tied to it. And I'm gonna believe in her until I'm on my deathbed. And that's the difference between commitment and attachment. Commitment is something that even when everything looks like it's not going to work out, you're like, it's happening. You decide that it's happening and you keep going after it. You keep failing towards it. Versus being attached to something, you're just kind of like sitting there and you might be trying, but you're trying from an energy of, if this doesn't work, I'm failed or I'm doomed or my life isn't good enough. My life is amazing, regardless of whether or not Marilyn is here. And I'm still committed to going out and creating her. Someone else asked a really good question on my Instagram the other day about how do you reduce desire and attachment while in a relationship? And I thought that was really fascinating too, because I had never consciously thought about it. But in my current relationship, it doesn't mean that I'm not madly in love with him. It doesn't mean that I'm not talking about forever and talking about getting married with him. And we're talking about, what our next steps in a relationship. But it's unattached in the fact that I'm like, I love my life with him, but I also know that I love my life without him. I love the idea of my future with him, but I also know I'm going to love the idea of my future without him if we decide not to be in each other's lives. So I hope, did that answer your question?
Yeah, well, I think that's just really powerful what you're saying. And that's what I've just been, with the buying the three-piece band, like, just knowing that like at the end of the day, it's our journey, like it's just, there's only one, like we were born alone, we're gonna die alone. And like
And
if
you,
we don't stay committed to like creating that life, and we can't control, who comes in and out of our life or what another partner is going to do, but we can control staying committed and married, quote unquote, to ourselves. And I think when we just have that mindset, and in my experience with relationships, and even the one that I'm in now, of being like, the more committed I'm getting on my path, like the more, like I just bought the instruments, and then he's like, so are you going to get any more attractive? Like, like he's just so attracted to the fact that I keep, doing those things. And it's like, but if I didn't do that and I just started losing myself in the relationship, which I've done, time and time again in the past, it's like, that's when things can kind of fall away. So it's just like staying in that zone. So what do you recommend to your clients about like staying committed to yourself while being in a relationship where there's obviously emotions and hormones flying all around?
Yes, I love that. And I think I'm really glad that you're bringing this up too, because all of this work can be done in a relationship or not in a relationship. You don't have to be single to grow. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people are like, well, you got to get good on your own before you can be good with someone else. And I don't necessarily believe that that's true. I've seen a lot of people grow and get really good with themselves while also in a relationship. In terms of like, what would I recommend for people to really learn and stay committed to themselves? I think I talk about building a life that's bigger and better than, and I also talk about building a life that no one can take away. And the analogy that I kind of use for that, I use ice cream.
Nice. That's fine. We like ice cream here.
So
Mhm.
I'm like, you're building an epic sundae and your partner gets to be the cherry on top so that if that cherry rolls off, you get to put crumbles on top of it, or you get to find a new cherry to put on top of it. But you always have that epic sundae. And that doesn't mean that you're not always like growing and creating a life with someone. It means that you're growing and creating your life to satisfy and fulfill you. And then you also get to do that with someone else when it makes sense. So I think I'm trying to think of like a tangible real life example of this. And I'm currently going through a situation. So I'm with my partner, Jake. He's phenomenal. So amazing. He put up my background for me. I love
Oh,
it.
that's beautiful.
Thank
Mhm.
you.
Mhm.
And we're thinking about moving in together. And one of the things that we're thinking about remodeling his home instead of buying a new home. And so I'm like, what does my epic Sunday look like? Do I have my own home or do I share a home with my partner? And I've had my own home. I've had my own apartment. I've had my own home. I'm now living with my best friend, which is an experience that I've always wanted to have. And so now for me, the epic Sunday looks like having an experience of sharing a home with someone else. So that's the experience I'm going to choose. Now, if we decide to split up and go separate ways, that doesn't mean I'm not going to have an elegant, amazing, beautiful home that I'm totally obsessed with just because we remodeled a home together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just still, yeah, having those options and
And making sure it's like
choosing
clear
the
to you, what are
experience. Yeah.
your authentic desires? And
Yes.
knowing that you can create that regardless of who it's with. And so like if you want to create it with your partner, do that. But at the same time, I have like my own whole life, like my friends, my family, my business, all of that, that also fulfills me. That's just like one component of the larger picture, which I think is what
Mhm.
you're saying by like finding your own hobbies, figuring out what brings you joy, that kind of
Mhm.
thing.
Absolutely. So I'm really hearing that intentionality behind the actions that you're
Mhm.
taking. Cause I know for myself, it's been just so easy. And like the times that I've like moved in with someone because it's just like, oh, like scarcity, like my business wasn't all the way where it is now. So it's like, oh, well, cheaper rent. Of course I'm going to move in with you, which is fine. That was a
Yes.
choice as well. But like, as far as, there's impacts to those decisions too.
Mhm.
And so I have made it, more of a built-in practice. And I think it's important for everybody to hear this is like, before you make those major life decisions, like ask yourself, is this what my next chapter is about? Like, what is the growth that I will do if I choose to move in with this person? Okay, well, I want to learn how to cohabitate and set my boundaries and stay committed to myself while we're living in the same space. Beautiful. Like, is that in alignment? Will you still be living your dream life with your business and your friends and your family? Like, will you still have the rest of your Sunday if you make that decision, or are you going to throw all that away because you're just going after this thing and, really looking at it?
Right. And recognizing that it's not all happening to you. Like you moving in with your partner wasn't something that just happened to you because of the scarcity around your business, right? It was a conscious decision that you made. And so, therefore, if it is undone at one point, that's okay because you consciously made that decision.
Oh,
It didn't
it's
just like
huge.
happen to you. And I think
Yes.
a lot of times we're like, oh, well, I did this because of this and it just happened. And versus being like, oh, no, I chose that. I chose
Yes.
to do that. And now I can choose differently and still create an epic and beautiful, amazing Sunday.
It's so good. Yep, because it's just preventing that, in case something did happen in the future, the breakdown if to not be getting mad at yourself and being like, I can't believe I did that. Like, it's preventing the hard on yourself when you go into it consciously, like you're saying, of like, I am choosing to do this. I'm aware of all of the
Mhm.
possible impacts this could have, and I'm okay with it because I want that growth, or I want that experience, or it's worth taking that kind of risk on.
Yes. And I also want to talk about compromise. Can we talk about compromise?
Yeah,
I would actually kind of
please.
love to get this is just a riff here that's coming up for me, but I
Mhm.
think that we have been trained to believe that compromise is this like heroic thing. And we get into a routine of thinking that if I compromise, you have to compromise. And you see it as this like enlightened, heroic thing. And I just don't agree with it. Like, I do not compromise in my life ever, period. I make conscious decisions. So when it comes to this house, I could easily say, like, I'm compromising because we're going to have to renovate the house. I'm sorry. I need to back up. We don't even have to renovate the house. What I was saying, for me to move into the house, I said, Jake, it has to be renovated. I want to live in a beautiful home that I feel, and so it would need to be renovated and remodeled for, like, that's what I want.
Mhm.
And some people might say he's compromising by doing that, but I'm like, no, he's making a conscious decision to up level in his life in a certain way. And so it's like the same thing comes for you. Whatever, if another example of this would be, he likes to have the fan on at night. And normally that's not my thing. And I could easily be like, oh, I'm compromising. But then it just, like, it feels weird. It feels like, if I'm compromising to have the fan on, what are you doing for me? Versus just being like, oh no, I'm consciously deciding that I would like to have the fan on because my partner likes to have the fan on, and I have this beautiful eye cover so my eyes don't get dry and it's not a problem.
Mhm.
Do you see what
Love
I'm
that.
saying?
Yes,
Like the
absolutely.
difference?
Yes. I love the fact that you're so aware of how like the words matter, like it's so matters. I mean, I'm a trainer in neurolinguistic programming, so everything for me is around the words and they matter. And so if you're like, oh, well, I'm compromising for him for this, there's something energetically that happens to us where we shrink down. I think especially as women, or and even a lot of men too, but just like going, versus being in that when you say like I am consciously, yes, I want the fan on, right? Like it just like it you can feel it as we say it of just like coming towards it and we're not losing ourselves at all in that. And I
Mm-mm.
love that, you took that. It's like, okay, we're thinking about moving in together. You thought exactly about what it would to make it your, level 10 experience. He gets to decide if he's okay with that. Or if not, then we got to buy a new house that's going to be this way,
Yes,
or if he's not okay with either, then maybe we can't move in together, and it's just
exactly.
like,
And we
mhm,
explored all of those options. And I think that that's a beautiful thing too, is to be in a relationship where you can explore all of those options. If someone's not open to exploring all of those options, that's like a red flag in my eyes. But a
mhm, I
hundred
agree.
percent, I love that too, because going back to the Epic Sunday example, it's for me to keep my Epic Sunday, I have parameters that I want to keep on it. And I don't have to, I want to, and I desire to. So it's coming from that open place versus like I have to or I need to energy.
Mhm, absolutely. Yeah, which I think just ends up puts us into a, danger zone as far as like how successful is the relationship going to be. So it really sounds like it's like building that muscle up to always make decisions this way, making those empowered choices. When I'm guiding people through getting over the diet mentality and this kind of stuff, it's like, it's I don't know if I want to do this. And it's just like make an empowered choice. And like the peace comes after that. Like, do you want the cheesecake? If the answer is yes, then the answer is yes.
And
Have the
own
damn
it.
cheesecake and enjoy the
Mhm.
out of that no matter what. Right. Even if your stomach hurts after, it's same as what you're talking about. Even if the relationship doesn't work, you chose it. You
Mhm.
had that moment and you made that decision of like, I could get a stomach ache after it may, I might be in the bathroom all night, but then you're not suffering because you made that choice. You're like, yep, this is what I did. And if I choose to do something different next time because of this experience, that's fine. But
And you
maybe it
can
was worth the stomach
celebrate
ache.
yourself for that. Like
Yeah.
celebrate
Mhm.
yourself for, like, I made the conscious decision to move into this apartment with my partner, whatever it might be. I made that like, kudos to you, boo. Like, I tried it. I tried it on. We found what
Mhm.
worked. We found what didn't work. There's so much to celebrate in that experience. Like, yes, you're going to have grieving and pain. I'm not saying just skip over all of the heartbreak. I'm saying, like, when you get to that point, you do have the ability to celebrate that you tried, that you put forth a significant effort, that you put your all into something, that you loved something fiercely. And that's a beautiful thing.
100%. I just interviewed the owners of the Confident Woman podcast, and we were
Ooh,
we were talking about the definition of confidence and what we really came to. Because I was like, people will always come to me and be like, "Oh my gosh, you're so confident," but we were talking about how like we all have things that we're working on. And like, how do you balance that, like upholding that leadership and also still having vulnerabilities in places where you're not or whatever. And what we came to in that conversation was how it's really what makes people see me, and I'm sure you, as so confident, is that we take those risks, that good for you, boo. You've tried that on and you failed maybe. And like, but look who you became because of that. And like, it's the unstoppability that really
Yes.
makes that, thing be so empowering. And and I think as long as that, and the thing is like, we don't know what we don't know. Right. So it's like, we're going to make as conscious of a decision, because I think the risk here with this conversation, what we're talking about is the perfectionist mentality coming in of like, because there could be things that we overlook in every relationship. There's little things that we, like, oh, I should have picked up on that, like little signs along the way or whatever. But it's like, you're going to make the best conscious decision you can with what you have right now, and trust also that, whatever comes up along the way while you're doing that is, and then that will, if it doesn't work, then that will bring you to the next awareness and giving that next shot, the next cherry on top, a better chance as well, to just really have the Sunday of your dreams. But so loving yourself along the way too, because to be confident, to be unstoppable, to, say good for you for taking that risk, you also have to make a lot of mistakes. But like, when you have that mindset of it's about growth, versus perfection, then you can't fail, because as long as you have built-in stops to be like, all right, what did I learn? Like, how did I grow? Like, what was amazing about this? How is it perfect? Bring in the faith aspect of it. That's what makes life fun, in my opinion.
I love it. Chills.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, how can people find you? What's your podcast? You have Instagram? Sure, a lot of people want to know.
Yes. So you can find me on the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast. It's on iTunes, Spotify, and then also you can come hang out with me on Instagram at Breakup Coach Dorothy. I would love to see you there. I'd love to hear all the DMs. If you start listening to the podcast, you have some big ahas. I would love, love, love to hear about it.
I absolutely recommend Dorothy's podcast. It was so helpful to me as I was going through that. And just like your voice is just like a breath of fresh air of being like, yeah, thank you for telling me that it's okay and that these things can happen. And it's just like, sometimes you just need that, it's like little helping hands along the way. So thank you for the work that you're doing. We appreciate you. Go check Dorothy out, her podcast, her Instagram. And for those of you who are ready to use this work on your emotional mastery when it comes to food, body, and weight, you can text the word hypnosis to 72727, and you'll get access to our free training and can book a call. Thank you so much, Dorothy.
Thank you for having me. I really loved our conversation. Thank you so much.
Good luck with your remodel. I can't wait to see what that looks like. If he can put that on the background of for those of you who aren't seeing this video, you better see it, because Dorothy's got a kick-ass background right now. It looks awesome.
I love it. I'm like, if he can hang this up, I don't know what the remodel
exactly.
Like,
the remodel might be really exquisite. We'll just hold our breath for that. If podcasts could only show pictures, well, we'll go on Instagram for that. So awesome. Thanks, Dorothy.
Thanks, girl.